Great. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Lights Out F1 podcast. A lot to talk about today, so let's just dive right in. First Grand Prix of the year. You guys' initial impressions?
It was pretty good. I mean,
Uh,
I think the qualifying was much more exciting than the actual race, but all in all, 7 out of 10 probably.
yeah, I agree with that. Actually, I'd go lower. I'd give it like a 6, honestly, just because um I think
Because you didn't enjoy
the
him
racing.
getting overtaken by Alonso.
No, but like on a set like yeah, okay, yeah, like obviously watching Lewis Mercedes get split was not fun, but I think on a separate note, I mean you change the regulations for closer racing and like
Yeah.
more overtaking, and you saw like a little bit of overtaking, but like
Mhm.
you just saw Red Bull sort of dominate the field by like a minute and probably more than a minute for the rest of the midfield. So like it's a good race, like 6 out of 10, but like I didn't particularly enjoy it as much as I used to enjoy the Bahrain races.
Mhm.
Yeah.
For me, I'd say probably a 7 out of 10. Um, I think if you ignore the front two, then it was pretty exciting. A lot of really strange positioning. I think a lot of people had Alpine pretty far up, and for some, well, Alpine is a situation of their own, so I guess we'll just start off with that. Esteban Ocon got 3 time penalties today.
Yes.
His first one, he got a 5 second for the improper placement in the grid slot, which they showed like a very small view of. It's like something very minor, but
Well,
because it was in
his
the wrong
you
spot,
can you
then
could tell you could see all the other cars lined up, and you could see the little
yeah, and then
the
you see
marking
like
line,
shutting
and
out.
he
Yeah,
was like totally over it.
Yeah.
So, and he
yeah.
saw it. He
So I got
saw it
5 seconds
too.
for that.
You could see him trying to
Yeah.
like get into a different gear and reverse, but then it just
Yeah. And then after that, he got another 10-second time penalty because they didn't serve his 5 second one right. And then they didn't serve his 10-second time penalty
they
correct. So they have
blatantly
15
didn't
seconds.
serve it right. They like
No,
started working on it like right
was it
away.
No, they didn't. They
wasn't it?
got close to it, but they said it was like
Yeah.
0.04 seconds.
It really looked like they were
Uh,
like ready, like
no,
they
no, they
were
had
like
like okay,
too
so
ready.
they get really close. But somebody touched the car 0.04 seconds before the 5 seconds is up, so you give him another time penalty, and then yeah, they pulled him early. And then on the total opposite side of the spectrum, Pierre Gasly, in my opinion, should have been the candidate for driver of the day instead of
He
Fernando
he would
Alonso.
have.
Like Fernando, yeah, he went from P20 to P9, and maybe in another lap probably would have had P8. Stellar drive from him. You got to see some really good overtaking. You got to see the real pace of that Alpine, and it makes you wonder, like, if he actually started higher than P20, than where he might have ended. But realistically speaking, he did get P9, and
Hmm.
in my opinion, probably driver of the day.
Sure.
What are you guys' thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, I was surprised
Um.
because his
No.
qualifying was not great. So
Um. I think in that car he should have been able to get to P9. So like it
Yeah,
wasn't very surprised. That car was like the fourth fastest car on the grid last year. So I think
yeah,
in that or fifth. Wait, yeah, was it fifth?
fourth.
No, fourth. Yeah, he should have been that should have been the minimum for him, honestly. So I wasn't
Mhm.
too. I was like that was the expectation for me. So I wasn't too impressed by it. When it comes to Esteban Ocon, I mean, it was just like he
Terrible
just
day.
thought like it was just like it just kept beating on him like
Yeah,
and like speeding in the pit lane. Okay, that's a dead penalty. That's like a you give it to him like immediately. Although he claims
yeah,
that he's been doing it all his career. So,
yeah,
but I mean, I think Alpine's performance average compared to what they could have achieved this for this race.
yeah. Um, on the other side of the coin, that was fighting for P4 last year, McLaren.
okay,
Not a good day
yeah,
for them.
I'm wearing the Danny today, the Danny Rick merch. I gave up on my McLaren stuff.
Oh no.
Just
So McLaren,
what are they doing?
Oscar Piastri. they're saying that his steering wheel is a problem. They changed the steering wheel, decided that it wasn't that. They pulled him. That was the first DNF of the race. Thankfully, there wasn't any safety car because he was in the pit lane for it. And then Lando was having another problem. And I guess at some point they just started running it like a practice session. Like they had him in, I think, what did he have, like 4 or 5 pit stops? And they
He
just
had
kept on like changing something about, like kept it pumping air into his engine.
Yeah, I think
It was
he had like a
terrible.
loss of like uh was it pneumatic pressure or something like that? So they had to keep pumping air. I mean, I've seen it before.
Yeah,
I think it's happened to Lando. I think last season happened to him once. I think the same thing. So
yeah.
or
But
it's either him or Stroll. But yeah,
hmm,
that was just an implosion on an epic
yeah,
scale for McLaren. Like first race of the season to like
and
go through that.
yeah.
Oh, that was a rough day for them.
Yeah, I guess in like, I mean, this is really bad for them, particularly because last year they had the same problem, and this year they come in already at the back, like feeling one of the slowest in the midfield, and then to have your rookie DNF and your top driver who got best the rest last year, he can't even bring the car home. It's not a good look. I mean, I can't. I think we all predicted them at least in top 7 this year, but it's looking like there's a lot of contenders for that now.
Yeah, I saw
Um,
a meme where it was like listing them, and McLaren was under Williams, but Williams was like at the top with like the midfield. So it's like
yeah.
they're the new
Um,
bottom.
let's talk about Alfa Romeo. I mean, Valtteri Bottas bringing home a P8 finish first race of the season. It's, I mean, pretty quiet race for him, right?
Hmm.
He got a couple overtakes in the pits, but then got overtaken on track. Almost got overtaken by Pierre at the very end, but did not finish his P8. Really solid points finish for them in the first weekend. And then Joe got his second fastest lap of his career. I think it was like a 133.1 or something like that. Don't quote me on that. But that's his second one on top of his one that he got in Canada last year. So starting to show that he can put in that very last type of fast time, I guess. You guys think we're gonna see some points finishes, like some more solid points finishes from him this year?
I think he needs it if he wants to keep the seat. Like Theo
Hmm.
Porcher is sitting in the wings, like, and I think Theo Porcher is incredibly talented, obviously. So I think he
Yeah,
needs
he
more
got
points finishes.
yeah, Theo Porcher, or it's actually Theo, but Theo Porcher actually scored the win in the future race today by 19 seconds, which in an F2 race is quite a substantial margin. Um,
Yeah,
so yeah, he's probably just breathing down Joe's neck like, hey, that seat's looking awful nice. So I think Joe needs to put up a bit more of a battle against Valtteri this year, but I can see him scoring more points than he did last year.
I mean, yeah, he can.
Um,
I think you definitely get some good points. I think he'll get points, but
yeah,
whether it's enough to keep that seat, because eventually when they turn to Audi, they're gonna want their own. I have a feeling they're gonna want a German driver in there.
yeah.
And whether it's
I don't think
Valtteri,
they'll just
I
give
think
up on.
Valtteri, yeah, I think whether it's Valtteri giving up Valtteri or giving up one of the younger guys, whether it's Joe or Teo, I think all three seats are like all both seats are up for grabs at some point. It just depends
Yeah.
on who performs the best at this point.
Mhm.
But otherwise,
Um,
solid drive for Valtteri. Yeah.
yeah. Next up, another team that kind of disappointed today. Haas, Nico, or not Nico. It is Nico. Nico Hulkenberg.
Yeah.
Uh, falling back from a P8 qualifying. I mean, he's shown he's got some one lap pace. Pre-practice 2 and 3, he got like P5 and then P6 was it, and then he gets P8 in qualifying. So he's got the one lap pace, but I think collision with Esteban at the start of the race, and he fell back just continuously after that. He finished behind K-Mag, who started off at 18th. So not a good day in the office for Haas, and maybe Gunter Steiner not having a good time with that.
Um, I think it's gonna take a while. I think it's gonna take a couple races for Hulkenberg to get up to um actually racing for points because I think he's been out of the sport. He's only had like what 2 races per season to actually like
Yeah.
drive he only drove for 2 races last season to get acclimated to these cars, and also the damage. I'm sure it didn't help his race pace. So
Yeah.
I think it's gonna maybe take a couple races for him to understand the new car and understand where Hulkenberg stands on a race day. Because obviously quality he can pull it out, but I think it's gonna
Mhm.
take a couple races. I think they'll score points. Obviously, I think they'll get there, but I think it's gonna take a couple races for them to get there.
Yeah. Um, Claire, walk me through Aston Martin. Some interesting things going on with
Oh
them.
yeah.
Yeah. I saw a video of Lance during the drivers' parade or when they were on the grid taking pictures, and he put his hands just on his hips and he flinched. So I mean, I don't think that wrist is fine. I don't know how he did the race. Um, he did great though. I
He's
mean,
sick.
he fought with George. He undercut George and it worked. I think.
Mhm.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
He beat him just out of the pits.
yeah, he beat him out of the pits. He stayed calm. He just drove his race. Not too much action, but just, keeping the car on track was pretty much phenomenal with the state of a broken wrist and surgery and all that. And then Alonso.
Sorry.
No, no, go ahead.
No, I think it's incredible that he raced, that he was allowed to race, frankly, because
Hmm.
I mean, if the news is true, he has what, two broken wrists, a broken toe, and like the fact that the FIA are, like, allowing him to race and just, yeah, it's fine, but like on the
Well,
sidebar,
yeah.
just
So,
like, oh, but Hamilton's injury is an issue. It's like, where are your priorities at? Like the fact that he's allowed to race, like I
well,
get it,
like the
you
thing
want to
is,
be in the.
they had him. So before Mike Crack could actually allow him to race, they did have him go through tests that they had to submit to the FIA. And he did pass all of them. So I mean, clearly he's capable enough to drive. Whether or not it's going to be an escalating issue, we'll see in the future. But he did pass whatever tests that they had for him, so he was able to drive. I think the thing that most people were concerned about when he started driving the free practice sessions was like him screaming at his engineer. He's like, "I can't turn this with my wrist."
Yeah.
So the fact that it didn't seem to be much of a problem during the race was quite a shocker.
Hmm.
Are
Um,
you guys gonna have a
but
podcast
Fernando
ready?
Alonso. Stellar overtake on Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah.
I mean, dude, the Aston Martin is and I guess in the words of the commentator, is so punchy on the brakes. Like they can brake so much later than everybody else, and they get so much more traction than everybody else. And the tire deg is insane. Like they have Mercedes level tire deg, Red Bull level braking, and I'm not sure they're a bit more draggy than like the Red Bull in a straight line or like an Alpine in a straight line, but they more than make up for with the rest of it. Um, and then he gets a pretty clean overtake on Sainz after a lockup. So he got an overtake on Lewis into turn 10, and then he
Yeah,
gets or
that was nuts.
yeah,
That was nuts.
yeah,
Like
and then he gets
as
an
much as I hate
overtake.
Alonso, that overtake was crazy.
Oh yeah, and then he gets an overtake on Carlos Sainz coming out of turn 10. So clearly that's a favorite spot of his now. But another thing of his besides his racing is his commentary. This is a great
Yeah.
car. I mean, and
Yeah.
after
What
he
do you
passed
say?
Carlos,
He
he's
was
like, bye
like,
bye.
bye bye to Carlos, yeah, after he overtook
Oh,
him.
you guys living the dream right now. Um,
Definitely. I
but
definitely think
after
he
that,
could
yeah,
have challenged Checo if he made his overtakes a little bit earlier on. I think so. I mean, dude, he made it all the
he
way
was
up to
24
P3.
seconds behind.
I'm saying if he would have passed the other cars or qualified ahead.
Yeah, I don't think he would have. I don't think anyone was contesting the Red Bulls. Like,
There's
if
no way.
anyone was going to contest them at all, they nobody in the field would be 24 seconds behind the second Red
There's,
Bull.
yeah,
Checo could have pitted and been in second place comfortably.
that was a 2020 Mercedes performance right there. That was like
Well, it's actually a
absolute.
2023 Red Bull performance.
That was a dominant. Yeah, I mean, but like this, like even last season, like yeah, they dominated, but Ferrari put up a fight.
Yeah.
Whereas in this case, like it was like clear cut. They finished ahead of Lewis by 51 seconds. I think
Yes.
51 and a half or something like that.
Yeah. Max
That
is
was
ahead of
clear
third
cut.
place Alonso by 36 seconds. Like that is a
Honestly,
wild margin.
without pit, yeah, if he didn't have to stop twice, he probably would have like lapped the entire field at the pace he was
Yeah.
going. He was just cruising out there, just so like, which is why I think like this whole like regulation thing has sort of failed in some aspects. Like Red Bull, like you had 2021, which was like all the way to the end, a title fight. You know, there was overtakes. It was it was a consistent sort of battle that they had with the midfield and the front runners.
Yeah.
And then the moment you change regulations, Red Bull has just cruised away, and like the midfield is packed up. But like you wanted more front end fighting, so I don't know.
Well,
It's
okay,
a
so I kind of think
50-50
of
on the
it.
regs.
It's similar to how it was in 2014. 2014 to 2016, it was all Mercedes after the new regulation change, and
Yeah,
I mean everybody knows the W07, the W09, two fantastic cars to drive. What was the W07 got? It's the highest constructors points in the history of the sport. It was at 739, 33 podiums, 19 wins, and a 21 race season.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so I think Red Bull are trying to put on a display like that, but I mean, Red Bull, there's not much to talk about. Drove off into the sunset like we expected. A little strange in qualifying. Everybody thought they were going a little slow, especially in Q1, but then Q2 and then Q3, Max and Checo were the only two on the 129s. So
yeah.
Red Bull has definitely shown why they're a championship winner,
A
and they're
little
looking
bit of
like they're going to keep it
sandbagging
that way.
along the way, you think?
Oh
Or do you
yeah.
think there was actual minor problems with the car they had to change
I
parts?
don't think they had minor problems. Also, the fact that Checo managed to qualify P2 and only a tenth off of Max, and in what he said is a compromised car, flat out, just that's like the biggest insult to the rest of the field. Um, off the topic of Red
I
Bull, though,
mean,
yeah,
sorry.
keep going.
I don't know, like, what was what was compromised about the car?
He just
I
didn't like
don't
the
know.
balance of the car.
Alright, well, that isn't
Yeah,
like,
The car
his
like
could.
unbalanced
there's only
his
one
unbalanced
person. If
car
he
is
had been
better than
out
everybody
qual,
else's balanced car.
yeah, it's like when Lewis's 2020 car was like imbalanced. It was like, well, it's not really imbalanced by any
Yeah,
measure. It was like, and so
yeah,
I mean, yeah, it was a domination. It was a good, yeah, you give credit where credit's due.
mhm,
That car's a rocket ship, and
yeah.
it's just
Um,
like, yeah,
so on the other
disheartening.
Red Bull
Disheartening
team.
is the word.
On the
Ah,
other Red Bull team, AlphaTauri, Nick DeVries, you gotta feel bad for him. He was the only one of the midfield runners who didn't stop for the soft tires during the virtual safety car. And I mean, he was just freewheeling backwards at that point. Everybody was taking him as, yeah, did not help his case. And then Yuki, of course, on the soft tires, overtaking his teammate, constantly putting in that challenge for P10, but getting held off by Williams. So I think
Yeah.
they have some pace, but Nick DeVries not quite the start he would have wanted.
just
I mean,
I
K
think
Mag
I think
finished in front of him. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, but yeah, true. But I think it's an unfortunate sort of strategy call, and I think it's
Hmm.
it's something that I think he spent so much time at Mercedes, and I think he's watched Lewis and George and Lewis and Valtteri challenge strategy calls, and
Hmm.
I think eventually I think it'll take some time, but I think he'll get there, and eventually strategy will come towards him at some point.
Hmm.
So I think it was just an unfortunate sort of situation to be in. Where did Yuki finish?
He
Yuki
finished
11.
finished
P11.
11th. I mean, it's evident that they didn't get the car completely wrong. Like the pace clearly is there.
Hmm.
You know, the fact that they were challenging Albon for 10th place kind of tells you where they're at. But um,
Let's
which is
jump to
surprising.
that.
I was like, the
Let's jump to
Williams are
this.
in
All
10th
right.
place.
Williams, right? Alex Albon, P10. Logan Sargent, best of the rookies, finishing P12. Uh, Fantastic outing from them. Their car is rapid, just straight rapid. They managed to keep the straight line speed that they had. Alex Albon finishes in the points in his first race back with the team. Logan Sargent, I mean, the guy's got pace, and we can all see it.
Yeah.
Almost outqualified Lando in his first session. The only reason he didn't is because he didn't set the lap time first, but he set the exact same
I
lap
feel so
time
bad
down
for
to
him
the
there.
thousandth.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, clearly he's got the pace. He's definitely fighting out there. Um,
Rookie of the
I
Year
think the most
is his to lose at this point.
yes, And I think the other important thing to notice is that Williams have done all of this without a technical director,
Yeah.
which is maddeningly impressive. The fact that they don't have anybody working on their floor or anything. Um, I'm glad we have feet in the frame, Yakhub.
Yeah, Yakhub, move your camera.
Oh, sorry.
Uh, so yeah, Williams doing really
College
good.
students, go.
College students. I was gonna say, oh, but Alex Albon did point out something interesting today. The one thing that the Williams has always been susceptible to with the new regulations is, I guess, fast air, if you will, a gust of wind. And today there wasn't much, so he said it might not be representative of what it's normally like. So maybe we have to watch out for that in Saudi Arabia or some other races where it might be a little more gusty. But still, great outing for Williams today, especially for a team that everyone thought was going to be at the back of the field. So big for me, and I'm happy about that one. Um, Jakob,
Yeah,
let's talk about the Mercedes. Oh, sorry, Clay,
oh
go
No,
ahead.
I
no, I
don't
was
want to
gonna
talk
say
about
that
Mercedes. Fucking.
in our last episode, Jeremy, who's not here right now, he predicted Alex would get P10, and we were all kind of like, "What are you talking about,
Oh,
dude?" even in Patrick, the big Williams fan, wouldn't even say that.
I'm
So
not ready to say it.
yeah, but that was good. Good finish for
Mm,
Williams. Okay, move on to Mercedes if you'd like.
yeah,
Yeah.
Jakob, a lot to talk about in Mercedes today. Um, Lewis said during his post-race interview that they're clearly the fourth fastest team now and moving backwards, if you will.
Yep. I agree with that sentiment right there.
Mm,
I
um,
mean,
yeah, keep going.
no race pace. They showed mild race pace in the hands of Lewis. Nothing
Mm,
great, nothing spectacular. George didn't roll. I don't know. George finished P6,
seventh.
I think. P7
Yep.
behind Stroll of all people. You know,
Yeah, he got undercut.
had no race pace on his side. So I mean, I don't know. I think he couldn't overtake the Ferrari with DRS, and the Ferrari
Yeah,
has
that's
like
true.
basically like the tires are probably like gone.
Mm,
So like, I don't. I think the concept needs to change. I think they're expecting a big concept change at Imola.
mm,
So I think the concept definitely needs to change on that side of things. But
mm,
I think if they can get more downforce on the car and like sort of get somewhere with quality pace and race pace, I think they'll be in it because it's not that big of a gap right now.
yeah.
At least like get ahead of Aston Martin. Like uh,
Well,
they're ahead of
that's proving
Ferrari.
to
They're
be a
clearly ahead of
difficult thing
Ferrari.
to do this year. Aston Martin's not the butt of the joke anymore. They are someone to be taken seriously.
Which is it's just absurd. It's absurd.
Yes.
I don't understand what happened.
Yeah, we'll
I
jump to
don't
that in a sec. I
understand.
just want to finish running through the teams real quick. Um, who else was there actually? I feel like there's a team I was missing.
Ferrari.
Oh,
Ferrari.
Ferrari. Yeah, so clearly Ferrari have
New
not
Year's,
resolved.
same Ferrari. New
Yeah, New
Year's,
Year's,
same
same
Ferrari.
Ferrari. Clearly they have not resolved their engine issues, and rather than rearing its ugly head during the fourth race of the season, it's reared its head in the first. So, Charles driving a very comfortable P3 and then just falling off. And clearly they still have their tire deg problems as well because Carlos literally saying over team radio if he's to push against Fernando Alonso for P3, there's no way he's maintaining it. He managed to hold against Lewis for P4, which is good, but the two same issues they had last year, the same two issues they had this year, just too much tire deg, and not sure if this is a constant unreliability thing, but it's something that we've come to expect from them in this new era of cars. So it makes you kind of worry about the Haas and the Alfa Romeo on top of the Ferrari because they both run out on Ferrari engines.
Yeah. So if I could just shortly list off what I showed you earlier, Patrick.
Yeah.
They already had to. Well, first, okay, Q1 qualifying, right? Charles' car fell apart, caused a red flag, and messed everything up for everybody. Anyway, okay, next up, we've got the race hadn't even started yet, and they had to change the power unit battery, where you get to for the whole season. Before the first race, they had to change the first power unit battery, and then next they had to change the control electronics also where you
which you
only
also
get
get two of.
two of. This is before the first race, before the lights go out. And then his engine kind of gave up. They said that it didn't like break or anything. It just kind of like blacked out the control electronics. So it seems like he's probably gonna have to take a penalty in Jeddah
Race of the season.
in
That
the
is
second race
crazy.
of the season. Yeah. And then Science
Not looking good.
Science was complaining that the car was bouncing too much. And
Yeah.
on the team radio, they go, "We are checking." Like, again, it's just they seem
You just check.
unprepared to answer team radio calls. Like they don't know what's going on with the car parts.
Hmm.
Disappointing.
Yeah. So we all made predictions for our top 10 last episode for the race preview. On the race review, the number we've kind of calculated who got the most right, who got the least. Me and Yakhub tied for least right. If you guys go back and watch the previous one, the only thing that I got right was that Carlos Sainz got fourth. I didn't even predict Max in first, so that was my only one. And
Predict him first.
the only one that Yakhub got right was predicting Max would get first. Claire is second. She got three. She got Max in first, Carlos in fourth, and George Russell in seventh. Um, so good on you. But Jeremy surprised us all. He said Max Verstappen first place. Correct. Carlos Sainz fourth, Lewis Hamilton fifth, Valtteri Bottas in eighth, and Alexander Albon in 10th. That is some insane foresight. That's a 50%. I mean, out of 20 drivers in the grid, you pick 10 to put in your top 10, and he's got 5 out of 10. That is
In the correct
impressive.
position. Yeah, that's crazy.
Exactly, yes. Um, but yeah, so we're keeping tally of those. So right now Jeremy is heading us all, and Claire gets a pretty solid one. Yaakov, we gotta kick it up, man. It's not enough.
We'll get that.
On another type of keeping up type of thing, again, Claire said it before. If you want to join our F1 fantasy for the podcast, just drop a comment below, and we'll get you in there. But for our F1 fantasy, who's sitting at the top of the table, Claire?
You are your
I'm sitting
second
at the top of
Wait,
team.
our
is it?
F1 fantasy
I
table.
don't think I'm in the one with the big group. So
I
like the
don't
one,
think
the
you're the
three
one
of
with
us.
the Yeah.
The
What is
three
your
of us.
highest
Who's
score?
I
You're at
didn't.
the
I
bottom of the
haven't.
three of us.
Oh
You have
shit.
143 points. I have 148, and then Claire has 209,
I don't know exactly, but
something like that. But in the main group, my second team actually has the most points out of anybody with 269 points. Followed
which
by
is
somebody we might,
honestly pretty
yeah.
low because I think max points was like 377 or something.
Well,
But
okay, so I actually had
we didn't do
Max
great.
as my DRS boost.
No,
Here, I'll
no.
pull it up real
Like
quick.
the maximum amount of points you could have gotten from the race and the qualifying and everything was like 377
Was
or
it?
something. Yeah. So we're not doing
Um,
great internationally,
no.
globally. But Jakob's
But
not doing
for
great either, so that's what I'm happy about.
yeah,
Sorry.
You're talking
I
some
always
big
start
game,
slow.
your fantasy, but it's a long season, so.
long season.
Long season.
Also, me and Jakob have a little thing going because I know how much he hates Max Verstappen and Red Bull. So Jakob is not allowed to use Red Bull or Max Verstappen. Sergio Perez is still open to him, and I will not use Lewis Hamilton or Mercedes. But George Russell is still open to me. That being said, I think I'm okay with not using Mercedes right now.
They didn't do
I think
horrible.
I'm okay with that.
no, but I think Red Bull, I mean, they're guaranteed to bring you a massive haul of points. I don't think anybody's going to bring home points like that. You can put I'm pretty sure most people can probably put their DRS boost on Max Verstappen in their F1 Fantasy, which just doubles the points, and they're guaranteed to make a huge haul of points.
Yeah,
And
I
if you
think he
have Red
got
Bull, you're guaranteed
35,
to
and
get
if you
points.
had the DRS boost, you got 70 points just for having Max with the DRS.
There we go.
Yeah.
So, on my second team, I have Max Verstappen, who gets first place, Carlos Sainz, who got fourth, Fernando Alonso, who got third, Pierre Gasly, who made the most overtakes out of anybody, and Alex Albon, who finished 10th, then a Williams. And then for my teams, I have Red Bull, who gets both their drivers to Q2, and Alfa Romeo, which I'm not sure how they fared, but
Pretty good.
pretty solid team, yeah. Uh, Now, on the other end of the spectrum, I also have the second lowest scoring team. My team three has all three of the drivers that did not finish. So I have Charles Leclerc, Lando Norris, and Esteban Ocon, all of which who didn't finish the race. So it's guaranteed loss in points. I have Ferrari and Alpine, who again, not a good outing. And then Sergio Perez is basically the only one who brought me points. Uh, Claire, you want to go over your top team?
Yeah, sure. Oh no, I can't because I'm screen recording.
Oh,
But I mean,
unfortunate.
I think you can look at my
Um,
team. No, can you not?
Can I? Oh, I can. Look at that.
Okay.
Okay, Claire's number one team is third in our current league, and she has Max Verstappen with the DRS boost. She has Lewis Hamilton in there. Oh, it actually tells me how many points you brought. So Max brought you 70 points. Lewis brought you 19. Fernando Alonso brought you 39. Alex Albon brought you 13, and then you have Kevin Magnussen who brought home a lowly 8. However, Ferrari brought home 31 points for you, and Aston Martin brought home 52.
Nice.
So is Aston Martin and Fernando Alonso are probably giving you the biggest bang for your buck. 39 points and 52 points respectively. That is a lot of points to bring home. Uh, but yeah, so again, if anyone wants to join our F1 Fantasy, let us know. We'll get you the code, get you in there, and see if you guys can top me in there.
Yeah. I think
um, yeah, go
Ezra
ahead.
from Superfan Racing is like
Yes,
P2 in it right
yes,
now.
he is.
Yeah. He's got
247
some
points.
good merch. Guys should look him up on Instagram.
Yeah. If you guys watched episode one of the podcast, actually, I am wearing one of them. Super cool merch. Definitely go check it out. And we might have him on here soon.
Hopefully.
Um, yes, that'd be really cool. Ezra, if you're watching, give us some love. But outside of that, qualifying was super exciting this year. What was
This
going
race,
on
yeah.
with this race? What was going on with the Ferrari trying to test out using medium tires in Q1?
I don't know.
Beyond me
Yakhub,
is
what'd you think?
Oh, well, I just go back to the same old adage: New Year, same Ferrari. I don't really know. I don't think I didn't watch. I watched the highlights because I didn't wake up for
Mhm.
qualifying. But I don't know, dude. I think Ferrari clearly something's not working. DNF, strategy trouble. Like we had this big hype train about Frederick Vasseur, and
Yeah,
it's just like disaster for the first race,
yeah,
essentially, in my opinion. What was
it,
easy a P2, P3 became a P3, became a DNF and a P4.
yeah,
So, yeah. And I also think they just clearly lacked race pace. Like, they got destroyed by Red Bull, and Aston Martin caught up to them. Like, it was nothing. Like, Aston Martin are clearly. I
Oh,
think
okay.
Aston Martin
Aston
showed me
Martin
that, like,
caught up to Carlos. I
Aston
don't
Martin,
think.
Aston Martin, I guarantee you, would have caught up to Charles Leclerc had he stayed in that race. And maybe a better start. Maybe that whole entanglement between Alonso and Stroll doesn't happen.
Yeah,
I think Fernando Alonso comfortably beats Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz.
interesting. So you think right now Aston Martin probably second fastest in the grid?
Yeah, 100%. I think they're second
All right.
fastest.
Um, and then so that if you take Lewis's words into consideration, that means Ferrari third fastest in the grid, Mercedes pretty close.
I think it's a tie between Mercedes and Ferrari. To be
Mm,
honest with you, like it seems to me that the Mercedes has the pace. I think this track just didn't suit their car. Like it's very
yeah.
real limited, and their car was just like nowhere on race pace.
Mm,
So I think it's a very close for third place between Ferrari and Mercedes. I think over the next couple races we'll find out
yeah.
who's
So
faster. But
yeah. So after this first race of the season, Red Bull clearly the favorites coming in and the favorites coming out.
Hey,
I mean,
but season opener winning curse.
oh,
I'm not giving a poke.
I think this year it's getting broken.
I I can honestly see Red Bull winning every single race this season
Yes.
between the both of them.
Um,
And George said it himself, so I think it's like
George said
yeah.
it, but like
unless
Mercedes are
some
being so harsh right now on themselves. Like I'm hoping this is like
I mean, rightfully so.
their
This is not a
honestly
good
they
race.
they I they right they should be even more harsher on themselves. Like this has been a shitbox car for 2 years. I've had to deal with it. Mercedes fans have had to deal with it. Worst of all, Lewis Hamilton has to deal with that shitbox of a car. So either you either you figure it out, or I definitely think I was reading an article the other day actually that says that Lewis Hamilton could easily not sign his contract and go like potentially go to Ferrari or something and like
Mm.
just like leave Mercedes because like this car is not working.
Is
Like they need to
Ferrari
figure
Yeah.
much
it out.
better
It's
though?
gonna be yeah, that's also true. Why would you go to Ferrari? But like it's a fast car, like reasonably fast car compared to the Mercedes. Like that's at least like I don't know. It's just it is what it
Yeah.
is.
So I think we see this year, uh, this is a long-term prediction, but I think Red Bull are probably going to take it again. Max will probably take it again, and I don't think anyone's going to come close to them again. But this year, I think we're going to see a three-way punch out for second place between Aston Martin, Ferrari, and Mercedes. Um,
Yeah,
and then that means that all the other teams are going to be fighting for P5. I think the team that has the most ground to make up is definitely McLaren. I don't think there's anybody as far back as them right now. The Williams, I mean, people were saying they would be P10. The Williams looks like they might be like a P8, P7 team at this point. They showed some serious pace. I think topping that pack will probably be something like the Alpine. Even though Esteban Ocon had his issues, I think like Pierre Gasly clearly showed that that car is still fast. Um,
yeah,
Alfa Romeo will probably be up there in the mix. Maybe he'll hold a P6 again. Just because, I mean, it's not a slow car, and I think they'll bring home relatively low point scoring positions every race. So I think they should be okay. And the Haas is also a really big unknown. Nico Hulkenberg, K-Mag really need to start bringing home some. I mean, today was not a good showing from them. Um,
no,
Obviously, it wasn't helped by the collision, but just they need to bring it up to pace. Gunter Steiner, I mean, he got rid of I'm forgetting it, Schumacher for the sole purpose of finding a more consistent point scorer, which Nico was. But they need to get up to pace as soon as possible. And AlphaTauri, I mean, at this point, it's looking like it might be AlphaTauri fighting McLaren for last place.
I hope McLaren
What do
wins
you guys
that
think?
battle, cause Jesus Christ,
Yeah.
what
dude.
the heck,
If
man?
that's the case, Lando Norris will be gone so quickly.
Yes. I
Alpine
think
will throw a freaking banger of a party.
Yeah,
Daniel Ricciardo will throw a freaking banger of a party.
dude, that he's swimming in that 21 million right now.
He's making it rain in his he's making it rain in Monaco. He's just like, yeah, that's what you get.
And I mean, Oscar Piastri, he's got to be questioning his
See,
decisions right now.
Claire,
yeah,
here's a consolation for you. You don't have to see Daniel Ricciardo drive
I
that
know.
shitbox anymore.
Yeah, no, I do feel good about that. I have come to terms, and I'm happier for him to not be there with that team right now
Yeah.
because Lando is
Uh,
suffering. Um, Definitely, Mark Webber is like going okay. I don't think this was the right move.
I mean, Oscar
And
Piastri, he's got to be feeling it. Like, he's probably, there's no way he's not wondering, like, why did I make this decision and what was the drama worth it? Because, like,
it
that
wasn't worth
Alpine
it.
looks great, and this McLaren does not feel good.
Yeah,
I mean, Lando at this point, he's like, this is the second year in a row with the opening race of the season, and he's probably wondering, like, hey, should I have taken that deal with Christian Horner to go to Red Bull at one point? Because, like, I think if Lando Norris in that Red Bull, he's doing just as well as Checo. So, I mean, he's
Yeah,
got to be wondering, like, is it really worth staying another 3 years with this team? That's a long time to stay at the team that like consistently moving backwards. They went from
no, I
P3 to
think
P4 to P5, and this year
yeah,
it's yeah,
I think this season is gonna be like he's I think this season is gonna be his gauge on what McLaren can do for him, and he's also gonna be keeping an eye out on Red Bull and Ferrari and Mercedes, like
yeah,
because he's not gonna take anyone else, right? So and why would
yeah,
he want to? So I think I think if this season goes terribly for example for Mercedes and Ferrari in terms of just like not finishing P2, or P3 even for that matter. I think. Frankly, I think Lewis is just like, I'm out of here. Like, I'm
Yeah,
not dealing with this again. So I think that's a good opportunity for Mercedes to get Lando because I don't think he's as good as George in terms of raw talent. I think George got the upper hand. Um, but if Ferrari would like just completely disappear from a title fight, I think potentially you could see either, but I think you could see one of the drivers saying, "Listen, I'm out. Like, you guys need to figure this out." And I think
yeah,
Lando Norris gets inserted there, but he's definitely got options for the time. He doesn't have options right now, but I think by the end of the season he'll have
yeah.
something available to him.
I don't think there's a team that wouldn't want Lando, honestly.
No, yeah.
But the one problem with Lando, like even if he doesn't like the car or the team at the end of the season, the problem is his buyout cost because he's so expensive. Like McLaren tied him down to a very expensive contract, and I have no doubt that there's almost no team on the grid that can pay for him. He's more expensive than Daniel Ricciardo, and you can see how much it hurt them to get rid of him. So,
Does it come under
uh,
the? I don't. Does buyout cost come under the budget cap?
no, it does not. I don't think so.
I mean, but like if
If it
Mercedes
did,
will like go.
even still, like, I mean, Mercedes didn't have to worry about paying off George because, I mean, the guy was cheap. I mean, coming
Yeah,
from
the guy
Williams,
makes.
they
I
can't hold him.
think probably makes like 2 or 3 million a year compared to Lewis who makes like
Yeah, at
50.
F1 Manager, you can buy him. His contract has him for 2 million a year. Like, and I
Yeah, and
think
that's pretty.
Lando's
That's
making
pretty
like
accurate,
27 a
anyways.
year.
Yeah, he'll get a big
So
contract. George will get a
yeah,
big contract too.
100%. But circling back to what you said, I think that if it was Lando and George in the Mercedes seats, I think they're duking it out, 100%.
I no, I don't doubt. They will duke it out. I think Lando is incredibly talented. I just think George. I think George has a different mentality to him. I think George has that sort of like raw hunger for it. Whereas I don't know if Lando hasn't actually fought anyone of sort of superior, like an elite driver. Like he's only ever fought
Yeah.
Carlos or the midfield. Whereas George has had a season against Max and Lewis, well, less of Max, but more Lewis and the Ferrari guys.
Mhm.
And I don't know. I can't gauge Lando. I can only gauge him against what I've seen of him. I can only
Yeah.
compare him to the midfield. I can't compare him to the elite talents. And I think George being able to
I
compete with
mean,
Lewis and
every
hold his
time
own
he
against
comes
him, I think George.
up against Lewis, though, he does very well. Like think like last
Yeah, but that's
season.
also like. Uh, I think I mean in 2021, yeah, he defended Lewis pretty well in Austria. I think, for
Yeah.
example, but
That's where he's
at
like,
the same
Lando's got
time,
so much
it's
talent.
yeah, but I think it's at the same time it's only like those flashes, like consistent.
Yeah.
Like you can do it in a race, but consistently to fight an elite driver over a season is completely different, right?
Yeah.
It
I
takes it
think,
out of you, especially some. Yeah,
yeah, good one. So I think George, now that he's actually in that Mercedes seat, you're right, he does have that experience of fighting against the top drivers. Um, I think we can't really tell how talented Orlando would be in a seat like that until it actually happens, just because like we all knew George would be talented, but we didn't know he'd be like, hey, I beat Lewis Hamilton and points type of talented, even though like given the circumstances of the season. But Lando, like you said, he's never had to fight anybody else outside of the midfield, and he fought like a very young Carlos Sainz and a very decrepit Daniel Ricciardo, who was not enjoying the car. And he's also been on
Dude,
a team that hasn't
why'd you
been
say
punching at
that?
the front.
Oh my
I
god.
mean, he's like Daniel Ricciardo came from a team that was, I mean, they could have been moving forward, and then he went to Renault, which terrible career move in my opinion, but whatever. And then he moves from Renault to a team that looked
but
like
they
they were
were
getting
before.
better. Huh?
I think he would have done a lot better if he had stayed at Renault. If he had just
100%.
stayed with them, stuck it out 2021, and then started the new regs with them, I think he would have done a lot better.
100%, yeah. But yeah, like you said, like Lando Norris hasn't had that opportunity to fight with a high level car against all the high level drivers. Um, with that being said, though, I think Lando has proven that he is the best of the midfield, and I think he's done it on multiple occasions. Last year being foremost amongst them, like he beat out Esteban Ocon, who was P8 in the championship by like 40 points, in a very bad McLaren. No offense, of course, but they're just not doing too hot. Um, I would like to see him like race against George Russell in the same car. That'd be sick, because then both of them will be drivers that came from driving shit boxes to driving a very nice Mercedes. Well,
Hopefully.
not a nice Mercedes. But that will time will tell how that goes. I think this year is most important for Lando because it'll tell him what Mercedes or what McLaren can do for him. And it's most important for Mercedes and Lewis because it'll tell Lewis whether or
Yeah.
not it's like time to call it with Mercedes and call it in the sport entirely.
I don't know if he calls it on the sport entirely.
Yeah.
I think he's motivated enough that he might find a seat at Ferrari or something.
Mm,
Um, and you would hope that if it comes to that, and if it comes to the point where he has to leave Mercedes, then you would hope that he'd be able to help Ferrari out with their issues and
yeah.
sort of be that senior driver that Seb used to be and sort of lead them to a sort of championship winning way. But I don't want to see that happen. I'd like to see him win his eighth Mercedes. I'd like for them to get the car right.
Yeah.
And I think that's a worst case scenario for Mercedes and for Lewis particularly because adjusting to a new team at 39. Oh, if he turns 39, he turned 39 this year, right? So
Yeah, he'll turn. Well, I
you
think
know,
he's
Fernando's
turning
doing just
38.
fine.
Yeah.
Alonso, Fernando, and Seb did just fine. So I think he'd
I
be
mean,
fine.
Fernando
But
said
like,
60 is the new 40, so that means
yeah,
40 is the
true.
new 20.
I don't know. I think it'll be difficult for him to say. I mean, it'll be difficult as any driver is, but I don't want to see it happen. I'd rather see him
Mhm.
stay. Stay.
Oh, interesting thing I was thinking of earlier after Lance drove a very good race today, especially with the broken wrist. Um,
Wait, what
one of
about
the
their
big things.
collision?
Yeah, okay. So
Uh,
first off, the Aston Martin front wing has to be so strong because both of them hit somebody with
Yeah.
their front wing and neither of them broke. So that
Who
thing's
did Fernando
built.
hit?
I think he hit Carlos at one point.
Oh yeah. I remember that. Yeah.
But like those two front wings untouched is sick.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm surprised he didn't have a rear puncture after Lance hit him in the
yeah,
first lap. I was like, wow.
I was talking to Claire about this actually. The new Pirelli tires, I mean, so sturdy. Like if that would have happened on the previous type of tires, the 14-inch ones, rather than the current 18-inch tires, I think 100% puncture. But yeah, Lance Stroll drove a very good race today. And one of the things we were talking about previously was seeing how he matched up to somebody who still has that drive, has that hunger, and wants more. In this case, it's Fernando Alonso instead of Seb. And I mean, first race of the season, it's not like he was miles off of his teammate. He was actually driving a great race, especially given
Yeah.
his like hand condition. So you can only wonder how well he would do if his hands were okay and he was a bit more confident with the car. But like, I mean, this is something that we've all been like seeing, trying to wait and see. Is Lance Stroll like a made man in Formula One? And I think right now he's definitely punching above that weight. And I think he's
good for step.
um
Yeah.
yeah, good for a step. Uh, the thing is, his driving. I think while he's with Fernando, he won't beat him at all. But I can see Lance being like up there, like P7, P6 this year in the drivers if he keeps this up. Because today, fantastic race. The Aston Martin, great car. And once his hands get fully healed, you can only imagine how good he's going to be in the car. I mean, he's pulled a pole position before. He has two podiums to his name, and I mean, just great car underneath him.
I
Yeah.
don't see it. I don't see it with Lance Stroll. I mean, he obviously has talent. That's why he's
Yes.
in F1. If Mercedes were able to get that car right and sort of make improvements that catch Aston Martin
Hmm.
or exceed Aston Martin or get ahead of them, I
Hmm.
just can't see Lance Stroll like beating out George and
I mean,
Lewis,
he did it
like
once
whoever he
already.
has. He's only beat George, and
Yes.
we blamed that on the shit box in the car because that car was just like nowhere today.
Well, it's also
But
just great strategy from Aston Martin. I mean,
yeah,
fantastic undercut.
like, yeah. But I just like on pure talent wise, and it's all things being equal, cars being equal and stuff. I just don't see sort of Lance being able to beat out both the Ferrari drivers and George and Lewis for good points.
Hmm. I don't know. I could see it. Just like maybe not all of them, maybe not even most of them, but I can see him making up like one, maybe two places over them. I do think the car and his, I won't say Lance is like a super talented driver, But I think he's probably most comparable to a driver like Seb, where rather than having like a extreme amount of talent, he makes up for it with an overwhelming wealth of experience that keeps coming his way. And I mean, he's now driven with a total of 6 drivers' championships, and I have no doubt that his base experience combined with driving with Checo, and then combined with driving with Seb, and then now driving with Fernando, he's gonna be like a very experienced type of driver, and you'll see it in the way that he drives. I mean, he's already getting much cleaner with his driving. It's not a lot of like random stupid shit. It's just better. I mean, today's race was
I don't know.
very
I
clean
think.
for me.
I mean, he's generally a clean driver. It's just that
Mhm.
he has flashes of stupidity and sort of
Yeah,
incompetence as an F1 driver, and that's being harsh on him. I feel bad for that. Okay, he has flashes of doing dumb things,
yeah.
but I think just he will. I think he will definitely have his moments where he's gonna drive. He's gonna like hit Alonso again. He'll definitely have it. Like there's one thing for certain. Like Lance Stroll will definitely have some stupid moment in the season.
Um,
So I think he's talented. Just my eyes, not that talented.
I think the person I can see him probably reaching the heights of it maybe like a Carlos Sainz, like experienced, somewhat talented, but I don't think world champion. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
Um, because I don't like watching them race. I mean, Carlos versus Charles last year. I mean, the last 2 years they've been fighting each other, but I think now, like with today's race, Charles was comfortably clear of Carlos, and I think towards the end of last year he also was. Um, Carlos might actually be settling in as a number two, which sounds horrible, but I mean, it just seems like something that could happen. I think that's the type of driver that Lance will end up being. Like he'll start off as a driver. Like once he gets a teammate, of course, that he can viably fight with, he'll be a driver like he'll fall off, and I think he'll probably be a driver that's most comparable to Carlos.
That's a
I don't
reach,
say
but
I don't
sure.
agree with that actually. I don't agree
Hmm.
with that. I think Carlos is a little. I mean, sure, role wise, I think he will be a number two driver if he does stay in the sport for as long as for next, let's say next till the next regs come in. If he
Yeah.
stays in the sport for that long, he will be a number two driver. I think you're giving a little less credit to Carlos. I think Carlos could potentially challenge Charles.
Mhm. Well,
If
he
it turns
does,
out that
but like he's like slowly falling back, and we can see it in the race space.
yeah, yeah, I think. I mean, yeah, I think. I mean, I say give him time. I think Carlos will eventually get there. I mean, okay, we've
Hmm.
given him 3 seasons to get to Charles's level, but I think at this point, it's where you taking Carlos Sainz's POV is I'm just as talented. You're not, but you're like you will challenge him at some point. That he always does. So I think
Yeah.
it's just like
Uh,
it's gonna take time. I think for all these guys, it's gonna take time.
yep.
For not Red Bull,
Um,
obviously, but for other ones.
yeah. But yeah, so good race today. A lot of interesting things happened. Again, first race of the season, so we have 22 more races to go and 6 sprints. A lot of points up for grabs
Yeah.
this year. Um, I mean, it's really not even about who's dethroning Red Bull at this point. It's who's punching for P2, who's punching for P5. Uh, that's all we got for you guys today. Tune in next time. There's no race next week, so it'll be a 1 episode weekend, but hopefully we find something fun to talk about. But for now, I'm
Yeah.
Patrick,
I'm Claire,
I'm Yakhub.
and that's the end we got for you guys.
and it's lights up.